take the intro too. You don't want the intro? No intro.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our final Inside Parliament for the year, a wrap up of what's been a huge year, I've got to say, and obviously acknowledging the events of the past few days, which I'll go to in a minute. Just want to thank you all for coming to these. I hope they've been useful. I try and unpack sort of what's been going on in Parliament in an accessible way outside of the soundbite. So we'll regroup and refresh in the new year and see if we continue these on into 2026. I'd like to thank you for spending your time with us and for engaging with us throughout the year. Obviously, start by acknowledging the traditional owners, Bennelongs, based in Wallumattagal and Camaragal land, and just pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And yeah, as I alluded to at the start, it'd be bereft of me not to have some commentary about just the devastating terrorist attack at Bondi Beach on Sunday. A targeted attack on Jewish Australians, an act of evil, and I know it shocked us all in so many ways. I've spoken to people who knew people that were injured or killed. I know people who were nearby, and then I know everyone else who is just completely stunned and shocked and grieving at the horror that we saw on Sunday. This is not an Australia that we want to see, and I know that there's a lot of work to do in regards to anti-Semitism, in regards to extremism, that all of us need to be a part of, and a challenge that all of us need to confront, particularly the federal government, but obviously state governments, but also broader society. It's been a very tragic and horrific end to the year. On sort of what the federal government and state governments have done, particularly New South Wales, since the horrors of Sunday, there's been two important meetings. One being the federal cabinet met, so that's just the federal government and the Labor government and its ministers met on the 15th of December, and they resolved some things pretty quickly. They've extended funding for security to the National Council for Jewish Community Security and its state-based community security groups to provide security for the Jewish community. They're working through the process of declaration under terrorism and insurance acts that will enable insurance companies to pay out businesses for losses, some practical steps, but also working closely with the Jewish community to see how best the federal government can support charity efforts, particularly through tax deductible donations, which will be important moving forward. On that same day, National Cabinet also met. National Cabinet is a collection not only of the federal government, but also all the state first ministers. And it was there that some pretty decisive action was taken, first of all. Obviously, I guess, a renewed pledge, but it seemed like much stronger language, as you would expect, to a pledge to eradicate anti-Semitism, hate, violence, and terrorism, to, I guess, speed up work on the National Hate Crimes and Incidents Database, but also all state premiers agreed to a renewed focus and strong, decisive focused action on gun law reform as an immediate action. There's been a national firearms agreement first established in 1996, and there will be a review of that. And you've seen the Minns Labor government, Chris Minns, made an announcement today that state parliament will be recalled next week to deal with some legislation there. But being a federation, it's important that all states undertake similar reform, and that was agreed to at National Cabinet on the 15th of December. There is, of course, much work to do in regards to social cohesion, anti-Semitism, extremism. There are questions that need to be asked of our intelligence agencies, and that's something that I'll certainly be doing in my capacity as a member of the Parliamentary Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence and Security to understand decisions that were made and how these two evil individuals were able to act in the way that they did without surveillance. So there's an ongoing piece of work in regards to that. So you'll see some action at the state government here in New South Wales next week. But this has been over the past 2 years and will continue to be ongoing work for us as a government, acknowledging that it's been a really, really tough few years for Jewish Australians, culminating in Sunday's horrors. I'm shocked, I'm angry, but I'm like many of you, pretty emotional at what happened, and totally understand community sentiment out there that more needs to be done, not only from government but from society on this. Jewish Australians, as I've spoken to locals, I've reached out to local Jewish Australians. I've just reached out to our local rabbi at the North Shore Temple. They're the only faith group that has had security in front of their synagogues and schools for, years, decades, and they've been feeling unsafe for quite some time, and that needs to change. I think any reasonable human would understand that that's not how we want to live here in Australia, and we all have a responsibility to resolve that. And I will be one of those members of Parliament that seeks to look at whatever policy we can to address hate speech, hate crimes, anti-Semitism, and racism in all its forms. I'll now move on to the rest of the year and the year that was. I'll keep it pretty brief and factual, trying to cram a whole year's worth of legislation reform committee work into the remainder of this briefing. These sessions are about explaining what's passed Parliament, how it passed Parliament, why the government made these decisions, and wherever I can, I'll bring a local focus to Bennelong, uncovering the four major issues tonight across a whole heap of policies that we may have discussed earlier, but this being a wrap-up of the year, I thought I'd bring it all back together. 4 areas tonight: cost of living relief, really important, climate and energy, a passion project of mine, but also I know that's something Bennelong cares about. Just some local infrastructure wins and commitments that we've been able to secure, and housing. I'd encourage questions throughout the night. I've got my team working on it in the background and updating questions on a live document that I've got here. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and we'll try and get some answers for you tonight. The first segment that we're doing is on cost of living, and there's a little video which we've prepared for that, which will go live shortly.
Will ensure fee-free TAFE is here to stay.
In just 18 months, fee-free TAFE has changed the lives of more than 500,000 Aussies. 508,000 people have accessed this extraordinary policy in training and education, setting in on a path to well-paid and secure jobs.
A crusade against digital payment surcharges is underway, headed by a Labor MP who's trying to have them outlawed.
This is a $4 billion a year rort that needs to change.
The government has announced no medical script on the pharmaceutical benefits scheme will be higher than $25.
The minimum wage will increase by 3.5%.
Fair Work's annual ruling gives the lowest paid workers an extra 85 cents an hour.
Australians with a HEX debt will see that debt begin to shrink. The tax office now has systems in place to remove 20% from HEX debts.
There's about to be a big change to bulk billing, meaning more of us can see the...
There you go. A little wrap up of what we're looking at there. Now, I could hear all that, but I couldn't see it. So hopefully you are all able to see it as well, but you definitely got the audio there. Cost of living relief obviously dominated what we were trying to do throughout the year, and it was really focused on structural relief as well, not just short-term stuff. So if you look at a lot of the things that we're doing in regards to fee-free TAFE, initially when we came to government, that was just 500,000 fee-free TAFE places. We ended up actually funding over 600,000. What we've now done is legislate permanent fee-free TAFE after the strong TAFE cut, but also identifying that reskilling is important for our economy. Skill shortages are a key driver of inflation. So if people can reskill, then that helps with our economy and it helps to drive down inflation. But also, like as a cost of living measure, it costs money to reskill. And in areas of priority that we need as an economy and a nation, like health, the care economy, construction, trades, sparkies, particularly for the clean energy transition. There's plenty of sparkies doing a lot of battery installations at the moment, right? And we need more as we get more renewable energy in and around our communities. And that costs money to reskill, and it's a cost of living thing. Some people might not change their profession or change their skill set because of that cost barrier. So fee-free TAFE is not only a really good long-term reform, but it helps with cost of living because those courses are free, but it also helps with our economy as well. My crusade for surcharge-free digital payments is ongoing. I've started this from day one with a real focus on reducing costs for small businesses and therefore reducing costs for consumers. And I always use this example because I think it just stands out. That in Epping, where my office still is, that's another story, by the way. We will be moving offices hopefully in 2026, but the search is ongoing. In Epping, where my office is, you've got a independent supermarket and Coles. On $100, the cost to Coles is 1 or 2 cents for them to process payments through card. They obviously don't charge that 1 or 2 cents on as a surcharge. At the independent grocer, for that same $100, they get charged $1.50. They get charged 1.5%. And they have to absorb that cost to compete. And I just think structurally that's really unfair. But then there are other small businesses that can't absorb that $1.50 and they pass it on in the form of a surcharge. And it's $1.50 on $100. On $200, it's $3. On $300, it's $3.50, so on and so forth, for the same amount of money. So a huge focus. If we reduce the cost of small businesses, then we can ban the practice of surcharging altogether. So in the middle of the year, the RBA handed down their draft review, and that recommended banning all surcharges, capping interchange fees. But I think there's been a lot of feedback that particularly for small businesses, there's more room to move. And a few people questioning whether or not just going back to the model of banning debit surcharges, but leaving credit, sort of recognizing that debit is the new cash. And obviously there's no charges on cash and there should never be. The same should apply for debit. So the RBA have sought an extension to consider all this and will hand down their final recommendations in March. Obviously, that's for the government to consider, and you would expect some sort of reform either by 1 July 26 or 1 January 27, based on what the recommendations are from the RBA, which is huge reform. In and amongst all that, and I haven't sort of made this public yet, but I plan to in the new year, the committee I sit on, well, it is public, sorry, I'm not giving you confidential information here, but there's a new inquiry that we've launched in February, will be held in February, into schemes and digital wallets, which is really important. So schemes are like Visa, MasterCard, Amex, FPOS. They form part of all these costs. They're one of the groups of companies that profit from digital payments, and they've kind of mainly got off scot-free until now. So they're coming to the Parliament in February for an inquiry, but also digital wallets, Apple, Google, they take a cut too. Everyone takes a cut. And it's, for what we know is the cheapest way to move money around, it seems absurd that there's all these companies taking a cut and small businesses and consumers cop it at the end for what we know to be a cheaper way to move money than cash. So watch this space, February next year, and you'll see reform next year. Another cost of living thing, cheaper medicines. When we came to government, a PBS script cost $42.50. We reduced that to $30. And from the 1st of January, only, 14 days away, that'll come down again to $25. That's a huge saving. Without us coming to government and introducing that first reduction, today medicines would have been $50. And from the 1st of January, they'll be $25. Pensioners, they've had their out-of-pocket costs frozen for 5 years at $7.70. I think we're 1 or 2 years into that. And this literally saves families hundreds and hundreds of dollars a year for up to 300 medicines that are on, it's more than that probably, but medicines that are on the PBS. I think I'm mixing up a 60-day policy with the cheaper medicines policy, but really important for pensioners to keep cost of living low. For people that just require sort of those repetitive medications, and there are some people, and pharmacists would tell you this, that would say, all right, I've got 3 scripts, I can only afford 1. Which medicine can I miss out this week or this month? What this policy does is just make medicines more affordable for everyone. And the savings per electorate are extraordinary, in the tens of millions of dollars. And that's real cost of living relief. We've obviously backed wages to be increased. We've delivered tax cuts in the first term, but importantly legislated for more tax cuts coming from next year and the year after. We want people to earn more and keep more of what they earn. We've seen real wages grow 8 quarters in a row. That hasn't happened for a very long time, and it certainly didn't happen under the former government, who had low wages as a deliberate design of the economy they were trying to put out there, right? So we've turned that around, and we've seen real wages grow for 8 quarters in a row for the first time in a long time, keeping pay packets closer to inflation, which we knew was a huge problem in the first few years that we were in government. Student debt, those of you who've had a HECS debt would have received text messages by now from the ATO, a 20% cut to your student debt. Again, a really important cost of living measure, and importantly recognising generational inequity. HECS debts are high. They're higher now than they were, 10, 20 years ago. So this 20% cut to your debt will help in terms of reducing the amount that you have to pay, but also making sure you get to zero quicker. Applied automatically, reduces lifetime payments, and important for people who rent, who are trying to start a business, start a family, trying to buy their first home, to have less HECS debt. And a real signal to young people that this government understands how hard it is to be a young person nowadays, with all these costs stacking up. Importantly, and this didn't get as much airtime, was the way that we've reformed the way HECS is calculated and when the minimum repayment kicks in. Now, obviously, if you want to pay more than the minimum, that option still remains, and encourage everyone to take that up as often as they can. But the reality is that not everyone can afford to pay more than the minimum compulsory payment. So what we've done is we've increased the minimum income threshold from $54,435 to $67,000, which has made a huge difference. So for someone with an average HECS debt of $26,500, you have $1,200 wiped from your loan with the 20% cut. But with those reformed HECS calculations, for someone on an income of 70 grand, their minimum repayment is around $1,300 less per year, because the repayments calculated on dollars earned above 67, not all the amount, including the 67 as well. So it just gives low income earners or moderate income earners that flexibility early on to use that $1,300 for cost of living, like buying groceries, paying rent, or if they'd like, they can still pay off their HECS debt to the same amount. So really practical reform there, recommended by the university's accord. Now, you should have received a text saying that HECS debt reduction. It's automatic. Go check it out. Let me know how much you saved. Lastly, and this is a huge one in terms of cost of living, from the 1st of November, we saw a massive investment in by 2030. We want, well, the department have forecast that 90% of visits to the doctor will be bulk billed. We know that out-of-pocket costs have risen. We know that out-of-pocket costs have become the norm, particularly since Peter Dutton and Susan Ley froze the Medicare rebate going to doctors for 6 years, and gutted funding out of hospitals and Medicare. What we've done in our first term and now from the 1st of November is basically reverse all those cuts. So we're now seeing practices retain bulk billing more than they had before, but also practices shift from mixed billing, where they would charge a fee, to go completely bulk billed. And so, to use an example here in Bennelong, in October, there were only 9 practices in Bennelong that fully bulk billed. Today, there are 14, which is 5 extra, which is great. And we expect more practices to come on board with this new bulk billing incentive over time. They might make the decision to do that from 1 July or 1 January or at a time that suits them and their business. This is sort of how the reimbursement system works, or the rebate system works. And I'll give you an example. My Health at Top Ride in October would charge a $35 fee to go see a GP. And from the 1st of November, that was free, completely bulk billed. Eastwood Medical Centre is another one that used to have mixed billing and is now bulk bill. So over time, I've done a bit of what I intend to do is let locals know where these bulk billing clinics are, which complement obviously our urgent care clinic, also at Top Ride, with one to come very soon in Chatswood to service the eastern part of Bennelong. So these are huge investments in health, $8.5 billion to fund that 1 November change, and a really important structural change. Again, not just a sugar hit, but something that is structural, that will see bulk billing rates rise. But we know there's plenty more to do. Segment 2 is on stronger climate, energy, and leadership, and we have another video. How do we go with the videos? Are they not working?
Australia's 2035 emissions target be 62 to 70%.
We need more power into the system, right? So our existing power is aging. Coal-fired power plants are one of the primary reasons why electricity prices have been so high. And
No, not working?
No, we tested them before, but they're not working.
Okay, the videos aren't working. That's okay. You heard a bit there, but I'm happy to talk a bit more about our climate policy, something I'm really passionate about. This year was huge. You know, straight after the election, we had two major environmental things that we needed to do. One was set a 2035 emissions target. The other one was to change our broken environmental laws. And we did both of those. And I've got to say, was a huge relief for me as someone that cares a lot about the environment, but I also know it's a huge relief for business because both of these policies provide them with certainty as to the trajectory of our country over the short term and medium term. But also provides certainty to the environment movement that there's ambition in these targets, that we have work to do to get to them. And as the Independent Climate Authority has said in their advice, it said these targets shouldn't be a limit of our ambition. What I intend to do is try and get us to 70%. As quickly as possible and beyond. A few people were disappointed at that target, but I think my role was within government was to make it clear that we should, at very least accept the advice of the Independent Climate Change Authority, chaired by Matt Keane. We did that, and that sets a plan for us to get there. And we'll need to announce more policies to get there. This isn't a set and forget thing. It requires a lot of work. There will be challenges to get there. You read in the paper every second day of some challenges with the transition to renewable energy. There was one the other day about New South Wales needing to pass legislation to make sure that there were more of certain type of infrastructure which helps smooth out, adds inertia into the energy system as coal gets replaced. So there's challenges in the system, but as a government, we're ready to take all those challenges, unlike the opposition who just want to tear it apart. I mean, let's not forget, they do not want to get to net zero by 2050. They've ripped that up, despite their promises at the last election, despite that it was them that signed us up to net zero by 2050. They're not serious about climate change. They're not serious about the energy transition, and we are. So we've set that target. It sends a clear signal to investors and industry, and it keeps Australia competitive as global markets decarbonise. I mean, only the other day, South Korea said by 2040, I think, that they're going to shut down their coal-fired power. And we need to be at the heart of green energy solutions and decarbonisation so that we can continue to supply countries like Korea with energy, with green iron, with green products, so that we don't lose that income from coal exports, which we know will go down as more and more global markets decarbonise. So really important emissions reduction target, and I've got to say, very happy where we landed with that, knowing that there's so much work to do. The second huge thing was our broken environmental laws, and you would have heard me bang on about this a lot. John Howard wrote these laws that were in place in 1999. Within a couple of years, people were like, oh, these early 2000s, people like these laws aren't really doing what they're meant to be doing. And they've never changed, tweaks here and there, but essentially John Howard's laws weren't protecting the environment, and it was making it difficult for business to get the quick yeses and quick nos that they need. And it was really having an impact, going back to emissions reduction, it was impacting our renewable energy rollout. Like, some projects were taking 7 or 8 years to get approval, and that just kills investment, kills certainty, and would kill the transition. So really important that those reforms, if you tried to get through in the last parliament, were to get through this parliament. And we did. So we were open to working with either the coalition or the Greens in the Senate to get these important environmental laws through. that was right up until the Wednesday, and you would have seen the commentary there that the minister was in negotiations with both, but then it became very clear that surprise, surprise, on the environment, the Liberals were all at sea. They weren't able to settle on what it was they were seeking in terms of amendments to what passed through the House of Representatives, whereas the Greens were, and were able to come to an agreement with the Greens and pass this law, which is so important for our renewable energy rollout to fast track renewable energy approvals or assessments, I should say. Not every project gets approved for fast track assessments. It introduces for the first time an independent environmental protection agency, which is just huge. I mean, the fact that we didn't have one at a federal level is extraordinary. So they are a tough cop on the beat. Sorry to use that well-used phrase, but they will actually help enforce conditions. They can issue stop work orders, which no one had the power to do when we know that when there's evidence that environmental destruction is imminent. It just wildly increases the amounts of fines, and rightly so that fines just don't become part of the business model for those who do damage our environment. I think there's a link to turnover rather than just a flat fine. It increases a whole heap of powers, and for the first time lets the minister introduce a national set of environmental standards that need to be met as part of assessment processes. And importantly, two of these environmental standards can change over time, obviously, but importantly, they can't regress. So a future government cannot weaken the standards, but they can improve them. It also allows for the federal government to enter into bilateral agreements with the states, so that we don't have this duplication where the states would assess something and then the feds would assess it again. And that's where you just get these years and years and years of assessment. So the states where the feds agree, the states will be able to assess projects at the federal standards. It's not just at the state standards. Importantly, it's at the federal standards, and the EPA will do compliance checks on the states where we sign agreements. So that's huge reform. I can't stress that enough. You talk about there's the critical minerals deal with the US that really hinged on this reform to get critical minerals through a fast track approvals process. We've got the energy transition, which has a fast track approval process. There has to be a net gain on environment. I haven't spoken much about the environmental positives in this bill, but they're huge. Making native forestry subject to environmental protection laws. They were exempt before. Ending these exemptions for land clearing, particularly around the Great Barrier Reef. These are huge, huge reforms that should have happened a long time ago, much like our new vehicle emission standards, been talked about for 20 years but never delivered. Well, now in the new vehicle emission standards and these new environmental laws, it's been a Labor government that's delivered much needed environmental reform. We're finally getting more EV chargers in Bennelong, which is great. Lane Cove have had a lot of local EV chargers, which is fantastic. They're a really progressive council, have done that. Ryde and Hunters Hill, with all due respect, a bit behind, particularly since the 4 that I installed when I was mayor in 2019 hasn't been expanded upon, but that's changed now thanks to the Min's Labor government, which is fantastic. So we're getting about 70 new charges in the electorate, and they'll vary from DC charging, but also pole-mounted AC charging as well. So Ryde's just consulting at the moment. Pop on their website and have a look. Hunters Hill have either just finished consultation or are doing it as well. But really good to see the state government funding local charging infrastructure. Where the feds come in is that we do sort of the fast charging, particularly along national highways. The cost of fast charging is significantly more than that AC charging off poles. So it's appropriate for the federal government to fund those. Obviously charging, particularly for people who live in apartments, particularly for renters, one of the huge barriers to EV uptake we'll have 70 new public charges, hopefully within the next 6 to 12 months. I'm not actually quite sure of the rollout. If they're just consulting now, then hopefully the rollout will be sometime next year. Long overdue, much needed, and really happy for existing owners, but also opens up the doors for others, particularly those who rent and live in apartments, to have a local charger near them. And it's interesting, like, some councils will have dedicated parking just for charging. Lane Cove have got this hybrid system, which is great. So if you just drive down Mowbray Road, I think there's 4 chargers mounted on the poles there, and it's not reserved, so it doesn't take away from the spot. You get a long cable, you can park 2-3 car spots down and plug it in. And I feel that if we have ideally a charger on every second or third pole in the long term, I think that would enable a lot more people to make the switch, to reduce emissions, to reduce costs. Obviously, charging is much, much, much cheaper than petrol and diesel, and obviously it's good for the environment, it's good for your budget as you seek to replace cars. So hopefully we'll get those 70 new chargers across the electorate up and running. Segment 3 is local infrastructure. Can I just chat to the team? Do we have any clarity on these videos?
I'm here at the Lane Cove Aquatic Centre. This pool uses 99% of Lane Cove Council's gas. It is 60% of...
All we can get is audio. We just can't get any video.
Okay, video doesn't seem to be working for some really peculiar reason, even though we've done this a few times and we've tested it. Anyway, we'll try and work on that next year, hey, if we carry this on. So local infrastructure. I've really tried to obviously help deliver some local priorities here, and you would have heard a little bit of the audio snippet there. The Lane Cove Aquatic Centre. Now, Lane Cove Aquatic Centre is run on gas boilers. It's like something like 90% of their emissions come from that aquatic centre. And they applied for a federal government grant to switch one of their pools from gas to electric. It's a $1.1 million investment from the federal government, and it will save Lane Coves a couple of $100,000 a year in gas costs. It'll also significantly reduce their emissions. They have a power partnership, like a collective one through NESROC, I'd imagine, where all the power they buy is renewable energy. So that's just a huge win for local infrastructure, and then the council can use that $200,000-300,000 that they'll save on power to invest in other ways. They may invest it back into the aquatic centre. They may choose to other communities, and that's a matter for what we have this renewable council, and great to see an successful switch from gas to electric. That really over aquatic. The code very much a stadium. People, and if you know that I'm not, just goes, yep, thing, I don't, not my problem, and that helped Parliament to or a message or whatever, bring it on Mowbray Road. It rains, long history, including a trade fatality there. So one local one that needs to be locally by and Lane Cove Council. Local government 10 years it's tight, so they project what for this detailed find a solution, because there's accidents there. They're looking at wider, looking out the camber and having this on the road. So through the advocacy that I did, and I was able to get design work with state government, work in, fund the detail, the cost. This in the new the county understand cost to the Mowbray Road, and then if they, then I'll go in for you all. Government as one of the projects from federal fund, a lot of local, $1 billion over road funding. Hopefully that will address a really important road issue up there. Another issue is something I've been fighting for a long time, the return of the M52. So those that live on Victoria Road would know that the M52 used to run from the city all the way to Parramatta. And in 2019, I think, maybe 2021, the state Liberal government at the time, just with basically a month's notice from December to January, I remember they announced it around December, maybe it was 21, December 21, they announced it, and then on the day after Australia Day, the M52 disappeared, and it was replaced with the 500X, which was only West Ride to the city, stopping at Town Hall. Losing that connection from Gladesville to Parramatta, or from anywhere to Parramatta, right? From West Ride to Parramatta, that sort of peak turn up and go service, being the M52, as the 500X is now. The 501 did the trip, but it was all stops. It wasn't express. It wasn't as frequent. So when I was mayor, and since then, I've been fighting to get this service back. It was an election promise of my good friend Lyndall Howison, who's now a councillor, but was a state member for Ryde. And the Minns Labor government said it's coming back. So in 2026, we expect the M52 to return, restoring that direct Gladesville Parramatta connection, or Ryde Parramatta, or Parramatta Gladesville down Victoria Road, which will improve reliability, travel times. Like if you're a kid that goes to Riverside Girls High, you'll have essentially that turn up and go access down Victoria Road. I acknowledge also that a lot of people from Gladesville are asking for better metro connections, and that's ongoing work is happening there. I've got people in Greenwich that have asked for restoration of a route down there. These are all, and people in East Ryde talking about some connections too, Putney. These all stem from changes either recently made or ones that were made at that same time in 2021. So working on them, and importantly, we've got the federally government funded electric bus depot. Contracts were awarded very recently. Construction's due to start next year. 160 new buses at an amazing electric bus depot there, which would add capacity to our local routes as well. Routes like the 288, which are now really popular, all of them, and there'll be quiet buses zooming through our streets, which will be exciting. Another infrastructure building on federal investment, but also working closely with the state government, is the Macquarie Park High School. Construction is starting next year. Now, locals would know that this school has been promised for 12 years. It has been a long time coming, and it's had a lot of different iterations, right? Like I remember Gladys Berejiklian and Victor Dominello saying there was going to be a high school in Macquarie Park at the Ivanhoe Estate, and then that they were going to buy the old Woolworths site there at North Ryde High and put a high school there, and then that they were going to build a K to 12 school at Lauchlan's Line, but put commercial in with it, so put commercial and residential on the same side as the school. That was not what the approach of the Minns Labor government. They wanted to keep it as a school only. And then as they were redesigning and recosting it just as a school, obviously different costs to building it with residential and stuff, they made the important call of making it a high school only because we know that this area has needed more public co-ed high schools. So construction will start next year for a 7 to 12 high school for 2,000 students, a site entirely dedicated to education. And that'll be really, really exciting, particularly in that area where you've got affordable housing being built, you've got more housing going in, but also servicing our community's growth. Health services, I'll touch on. We had the urgent care clinic open. Very soon is coming the Chatswood urgent care clinic, like imminent, which is really exciting for people in our east. That was a core election promise of mine. And we've got the RIDE Medicare Mental Health Centre. That is basically runs like an urgent care clinic, but for mental health. It's free, it's walk-in. For mental health, you can get have a chat to someone if you're in distress before it turns to a crisis. Really important service, and putting mental health into the Medicare system. Our next segment is housing, which was a huge focus as well. It's one of the, I think I heard someone else, housing is sort of at the center of nearly every problem we face, right? People need to be able to afford a place to live, and for decades and decades and decades, it's just got worse and worse. This is a 40-year problem in the making. Our plan to address this is built on 3 pillars: by making it easier to buy, by making it better to rent, and by building more homes. And we've got policies to address each of those. We've rolled out early, so I think we started on the 1st of October, our 5% home deposits. So a first home buyer now only needs a 5% deposit because we want more people to own a home, particularly first home buyers. We knew that 20% deposit was a huge inhibitor to people actually being able to afford a deposit and being able to afford to buy a place to live. It was often that you had the income to be able to service a loan, but you didn't have the 20% upfront because obviously you're spending money on rent and other expenses. So this 5% deposit has been going really well, cuts years off time needed to save, and opens up the market for renters to become homeowners, which I think is really important. Help to Buy has started. I'm going to do a bit more information on that in the new year. But that's our shared equity scheme where the government contributes 30% and owns 30% of the house for existing homes and up to 40% for new homes. Buyers will need as little as a 2% deposit. And it means that the homeowner only has to borrow the remaining amount, 70%, 60%. And it works off in a few ways. You can either pay down the government the amount the government owns over time, or if you sell that property in 5-10 years time, then you can pay off the government share then. Really popular scheme in Western Australia. I was chatting to some WA colleagues. They've had a state government that's run Help to Buy shared equity scheme for ages, and they talk about mates that they know who are able to get in their first home because of this shared equity scheme. Really important. And importantly, we've raised the income thresholds. I think it's 100,000 for singles and 160,000 for couples in terms of annual income. I still think there's room for that to move, and I'd like to see that move in time. But the projects, the scheme has started. There's assessments built into them and reviews. If take up of this isn't as high as it could be, then expanding eligibility is one way to ensure that more of you get the opportunity. I think it's 10,000 places a year for 4 years for this Help to Buy scheme. Really important reform, helping people get into a home quicker and helping people on a modest income buy a home. Really important. The Housing Australia Future Fund you would have heard of, but we've launched round 3 of this really important new funding model for social and affordable housing. It's stable. There's down payments every year in terms of ensuring that affordable and social housing is available. And what these 3 policies have meant for Bennelong, they're all big macro here, but what it's meant for Bennelong to date, right, is that 670 people have bought their first home with the 5% deposit or less here in Bennelong. That's 670 households getting into their first home with that 5% deposit scheme. We've got currently 221 homes being built in Macquarie Park and Lane Cove North. They were funded in the first round of the Housing Australia Future Fund distribution. As I've said, round 2's gone out and round 3's just open now. So hopefully more to come. And one thing I didn't mention was build to rent, a huge reform. So we've now got over 1,000 build to rent apartments either under construction or in the pipeline, providing more rental properties for locals. And a lot of those build to rent projects, up to 10% of them will be affordable rentals as well. And I look to anyone from Meadowbank, APT Meadowbank, right on the train station there where the Coles is going to be built. That's exclusively built to rent, which will be a great addition and provide a great shopping centre down there for locals as well. That is it. I mean, I could go on for another hour, but I won't. Just to wrap up, I've got some questions which I'll go to in a sec. Thank you for those who have been here. Just as a wrap up, our office will close on Friday, the 19th at midday, and will reopen on the 12th of January. I'll be personally monitoring stuff as it comes through. If there's anything urgent, if I can, I'll help. But if not, staff will be back on the 12th of January. Obviously, you've got New South Wales Parliament coming back next week. There'll be a hunger for information as reform comes through, particularly in response to Sunday's horrific terror attack. So I'll be using my social media and emails where I can to keep people up to date. As you know, ugly as social media is sometimes, and it is today and every day, it is a place where that I use to provide information to locals, and I'll continue to do that. So that's a little wrap up. I've got some questions here. I've got a question from Carsten. Just some feedback from a retiree about gambling advertising. Wants to see a ban on gambling advertising as it seems to be out of control. And yeah, look, Carsten, I see reforms on gambling advertising as unfinished business for us. There were attempts in the last parliament to progress on recommendations of the Murphy Review. I was on ABC afternoon briefing just recently with Patricia Carvelis. This is something that I know backbenchers like me are energised about, and we'd like to see progress on that in the new year. I don't think it can stay the same, so I know I'll be working closely with other colleagues and the Minister so that we can come to Parliament in 2026, hopefully with further reform. And we did a lot last term. We banned credit cards being used for gambling. We introduced bet stop, self-exclusion. We introduced a whole heap of stuff around advertising and those tags at the end of ads. They're based on evidence, all this stuff. We've done a lot on gambling advertising in our first term and the most reform since Federation, but totally acknowledge that there's more to do, and I'm hopeful that we will see progress in 2026 on this spot. Because just like environmental reform, that was unfinished business last term, those laws that need to change. This is the same. So that's it, folks. We are approaching 7:30, so I just wanted to thank people for joining us throughout the year. We might send out a survey to everyone who's RSVP'd to these to see if we should keep them going in 2026. If we do, we'll sort out the tech because that didn't work again. and we'll get. We'd love your feedback on whether or not we should continue these and whether they've been useful. Appreciate your engagement and questions over the term. Please stay connected with one another. It's really troubling times at the moment. Please stay safe. Reach out to a loved one, and if you know any Jewish Australians, take some time out and reach out to them. They're very understandably hurt, distressed, angry at the moment, and we need to let them know that Australians of all backgrounds have their back, because, I mean, as you've heard many leaders say, an attack on Jewish Australians is an attack on every Australian. And I've certainly got on the phone this week and had a chat to a few community leaders. And if you know anyone of Jewish faith or Jewish ancestry, reach out to them, because it's a pretty horrific time for them at the moment, understandably. Thank you, obviously, to all the first responders, police, ambulance workers, as well as to Ahmed El Ahmed. What a hero! That bloke that took the rifle out of one of the attackers. Just extraordinary stuff. Truly the best and worst of Australia in one video clip there. Unbelievable. All right, everyone, that's it for me. I wish you a very safe Christmas and Happy New Year. Stay close, stay together, stay safe. Thank you. Bye.